experience started during a medical test in a hospital. I was on a tilt table. A tilt table is designed to hold you still so that you don't move while you're on it. And then your body and your brain have to work together. So to keep your blood pressure up and keep you from passing out, you have to fully make the connection between brain and body through your nerves. You can't wiggle around and get your blood pressure to come up that way. Well, I did not do well on that tilt table test. My husband was able to watch my vital signs on the monitors. He was sitting behind the doctor and able to see the screen and able to see me. He said that I just became more and more pale. And eventually at 18 minutes, I lost consciousness. I had seizures and I died on the tilt table. At that particular instance, I was feeling so terrible. My mind was mush. I mean, my oxygen to my brain was so little before that I really had my body wasn't telling me anything about how terrible I was feeling. I just suddenly popped out of my body and it very, very fast. I mean, when I talk about it, it takes way longer to say it than it actually occurred in. I popped out of my body, literally like my face came out of my body at the same time the nurse is getting up and walking through me. I'm turning, but I don't know how you turn, but I did. And I looked at myself in the face. So I was looking right at myself and thinking, who's that? It's like I didn't recognize my face at first, but then I started to have that recognition of, oh, that's Angela. I turned and looked at my husband and kind of all in the same. So popping out, turning around, or using 360 vision, viewing myself, viewing my husband, and then moving backwards into the corner. So moving up to the left of the corner of the room, like I'm being pulled from what would have been my body's back. I could see the room. I could see the doctor. I could see the nurse who had been sitting in a chair in front of me. I could see my husband get up, see the doctor put his hand out to keep my husband from going to me on this tilt table. And then I was in the velvety black void. So in that time of moving through the room in this out-of-body experience, I didn't really realize what was happening. I just was seeing what was going on. I knew that I loved my husband very much. My heart felt that. My heart went out to him, but I didn't make a cognizant, I didn't think to myself, that's my husband, Scott. I didn't think to myself, that's the doctor, that's the nurse. I just felt love for them. I did recognize, wow, I feel so good because the pain was gone. I didn't really realize until that moment how much pain my body had been in for so long, just wearing the body, but also this illness that I had been living through for a very, very long time and I wasn't aware of. So there was the release of the pain, a moment of, it feels so good. And then I was in the velvety black void. When I entered the velvety black void, I was right alongside my soul guide, my life guide, I think is a better term. Connected with her. Her name is Melanie. I talk with her every day now in a much more direct way after my experience. In that moment, though, in my near-death experience, I knew that I knew this person that was next to me, this entity. She presented as female. She had long dark hair. She had, a conventionally beautiful face with these beautiful eyes that were more lit than human eyes when you look at them. She was carrying a book and wearing a flowing dress. And we were just walking along, if you will. I didn't have a body, but we had this feeling of moving forward that many people do in this experience in the void. And we were just talking. It was a continuation of a conversation that we had been having. So it wasn't a conversation that started in that moment. And that's how I really made that connection of, oh, we know each other. This is not, you're not new. This is not a moment where we're meeting, greeting each other. She's always been there with me. We continued forward, and, again, like popping out of my body, it was all very fast, and it takes much longer to talk about it. I could see up ahead a glimmer of light and an opening in the void, if you will. And then we quickly were there, and it was much more like entering, I liken it to riding on a subway. So when you think of being in a subway and you're riding along and you're in the darker part of the tunnel and you enter the station where the light is, at least for me, it feels more like the light comes over you like this, like you're on the train and you're entering and it comes over you rather than like walking into a room. It was like slipping into a vessel. So as we were approaching it, it grew larger and larger, but still maintained an outer rim until that moment of descending through it. All different colors of white, cream, bright white, silvers, grays, little tinges of mustard in there. It was beautiful and sparkly, but not glittery. And then suddenly I was in this space of white light. So no garden, no buildings, no sky, no floor, no earth below me. I did not feel as if I was standing on anything. I also didn't feel so much like I was floating. There was no buoyancy there. And that white space was like a fog, not something that you could touch that was tangible, but bright, but not hurting your eyes, and soft. And right there in front of me was just this crowd of people. And at the front were the people that I knew in this life very well. So my grandparents, an uncle, other people that I recognized, a couple of friends from high school, but just I could see and feel past that more and more souls. And I just knew, when I would look in a direction at a soul, I knew and I would connect and remember who that was and the importance, not just in this life, but in past lives too. And a very interesting, moments were happening as I was greeting them. So we were able to hug each other in a physical form, put our arms around each other, touch our necks together, and have that kind of giraffe hug moment. And as we would do that, as I would look in their eyes to greet them, as we would hug, this flood and rush of our life together would come back. And we weren't separate, we were one. It was a singular memory where our souls were not, it wasn't me remembering and them remembering. It was a melding. It was, I was my grandparents and my grandparents were me. I was my uncle was me. So here's one of the memories that I had. So as I hugged my uncle, I very much vividly remember everything about it. We were at my uncle and aunt's house. My uncle was married to my aunt, who was my mother's sister, and they lived on a farm and they had goats. I could smell the goats. I could smell the hay. I felt the warmth of the sun. I could see the barn and almost hear it, the house, all the people, everything that was going on, the barbecue grill behind me. I was there again, fully and completely. And my uncle had just gotten a motorcycle, and I'd never been on a motorcycle, and he really wanted to take me on a ride on his motorcycle. And I said, sure, I'll go on the motorcycle. But internally, I was scared. I didn't want to ride on the motorcycle so much. I mean, I did. It was exciting. It was new. I wanted to try it. But also, as a child, I had some fear in there. So we got on the motorcycle, and they lived at the top of a hill. And we were driving on the street. So they lived up here, and the road went in front of it, kind of like this. And we were driving down the hill, and there were lots of trees. And it was one of those dappled sunshine afternoons where I'm riding on the back of the motorcycle, holding on to my uncle. And I'm remembering that moment, but at the same time, I'm my uncle and I'm viewing it from his standpoint. And I don't know, we made it maybe a half a mile, probably not even that far. And I just didn't want to be on it anymore. I was terrified. There was a corner coming up. I didn't know what that was going to mean for me. Would I fall off? And so we ended up ending the ride. And in that moment, I felt his disappointment in that. And it's very interesting. He wasn't disappointed in me. He was disappointed that he asked me to get on the motorcycle, even though he had those clues for me that I was scared to do it. So that was his disappointment. And we just turned around and we went back to the farm. But, that's for me a really good example for how that greeting moment went for me, that it was joyous and love-filled and a remembering of my life as Angela, a remembering of their lives, and a coming together and an understanding of how we're all one, experiencing things together, and we were able to make that connection as we greeted each other. And I did feel a lot of that, just overwhelming, blissful love. That's the core of what's there. Just reconnecting and remembering that's who we are. This general sense of love. So I got to relive a lot of memories through that. And it was really only then that I really came to terms with, wow, I think I'm dead. In this moment, I think of my family at home, and behind me, only you don't necessarily need to turn because it's the 360 vision, but it feels to me here in my body now like it was behind me. These portals opened up, and I was able to see my husband in the hospital room, and I was able to see my children. They were with their grandparents, and I was able to see, I have two children at that time, like 10 years old and 6 years old. The 10-year-old is sitting on the floor. The 6-year-old is on the 10-year-old's lap. And it was a very interesting moment because I was able to see my children as their adult selves. So when I would look at them, so I'm going to talk about my oldest child first. I saw her face, her beautiful face, as Lily. And as I was doing that, there was this flickering, like you take a light switch and you flick it on and off, on and off, on and off. So when the light was on, I would see Lily. And when, was the other side of that flicker, I saw Lily as an adult. Only Lily wasn't Lily, Lily was Adam. So Adam is my adult son now. So in that time, Lily has recognized that she is not a she is a he, and has transitioned. And I do have his permission to share that. So that was, such a beautiful thing to see. And in that moment, I fully and completely understood. I knew I had had hints when I was living on Earth with Lily at the time, with Adam. Um, and, that really helped with the transition. Then for me as a mother, having that, there's a grieving process there when your child transitions. And, um, I had had the hints and then I had had this experience. And so that was such a beautiful thing to have that gift in that moment. And then it was the same with Caroline, that when I would look at Caroline's face, I would see little Caroline sitting there, but then I would see Caroline as an adult. And when I saw Caroline, she was wearing, like a hospital nursing doctor outfits. And sure enough, she wants to be a physical therapist. So we'll see. She's in high school if she sticks with that, because we all have free will. But yeah, and since then, I've bumped into other people who've had a similar experience. When they saw their family members, they saw that flickering going on. Um, so uh, I'm in this space. I looked back and I realized, whoa, I think I'm dead. That Angela moment of, okay, I left my body, reconnecting with my humanity. I saw my family there. I saw my children and my husband through the portal, and I could do that anytime I thought of them. That portal would open, I would see them. And then when I changed my thoughts to something else or had a question, the portal would close. Okay. So then whenever I would think of something, so either remembering who I was or making that connection of, wow, this is our true home. This is where I'm really from. I'm really this love-based, non-human entity, soul, whatever terminology you prefer to use. I would connect to things about that, which I'll explain in just a second. If I had a question about something, so my human self would say, whoa, what about this? This is what would happen. In the moment, the way it felt to me is that I was standing in this kind of, the way it felt was linear. So when I think about it from the human side, it was this linear portal, if you will, that was all of knowledge, source, cosmic consciousness. There are a lot of different terms for it. And whenever I would remember something, I would kind of, it's like my body stayed there, but my brain, if you will, is, you don't have terms here, right? It's ineffable, would go off into this all-knowing knowledge. And I would revisit that. So I would revisit a past life. I would go off and see some other dimension. I would go and visit another of myself. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. So I went to see two of my other selves. There's, for me, no time and no space that we would recognize as time and space like we have it here in the dimension where I went when I had my NDE. And from that place of no time and space, then I can't really make a judgment about the time and space where these two entities were, other than based on intuition. So the first entity that I connected with, my other self, really, that's the way I prefer to say it, the other self I connected with was an ant-like entity. That's the best way to describe it based on Earth terms. So I was whisked off down this portal. It's like a Star Trek episode when they go into the hyperspace and the lights are going past like this, like that. And then I just came up into this black velvety void space over the shoulder of this other self. I didn't see anything around this other self. So no room, no floor, no space, no earth-like structures, just my other self. The black velvety void there was a little more dark charcoaly gray, a little more movement to it, softness to it than the black velvety void I was in when I entered this dimension that I'm in. And this entity, my other self, felt very tall, like 8-10 feet tall compared to ourselves. A very long face, rusty red body, what appeared to be an exoskeleton, antenna that were moving softly of their own accord, it would seem. Big, beautiful, round eyes, very dark. So very circular, seemed to be like a mound. And the reason I say that is, when you look at something that's wet, it has the reflection of light in it, in those little half moon shapes or quarter moon shapes. And I was able to see that. The other interesting thing about this particular self is that the body it felt softer and more human, like a cross between a human and an insect. So a thorax, but it felt more soft and human, an abdomen. And then the abdomen was more on an angle like this, and then the body was up like this, the head at the top. But the legs, when we stand as a human, if our face is pointing that way, right, our knees bend like this. It was the opposite. So the legs came down and the knees went the opposite direction, like that. It was all very quick. So it was coming out of this tunnel-like space, coming in over the shoulder, a quick, oh, you're me, hey, and then back I went. So there wasn't any time really spent there connecting or talking or anything like that. But my other self seemed to turn and recognize me. There was definitely a lightning bolt moment of, ooh, hey, I know you. We're in the same lifespan, the same soul. We're sharing the same soul. And then I just immediately was kind of whisked backwards again, or what felt like backwards, and then launched forwards again. And then the next space I went to was the same way, just this charcoaly black velvety void. And within it, I saw myself in another body. This body was blue and humanoid and very soft. The skin was very skin-like, seemed very flexible. But what I forgot to say is what I had through intuition of the red version of myself is that was a male in another dimension. So not in this dimension, in a different dimension, male. And I also had this intuition of a military-ish, very, strong, bold kind of personality. And then, so going back to this blue version of myself, she, in this same dimension, very close to us where we are now, very soft features, more, I don't want to say conehead, because if you've seen the conehead film, you'll think of a very high cone, not like that. Softer, but much higher than we have as humans. Coming down softly, a very human-like eyes, but blue, and a little bit, how ours come to a point at the end. Hers were a little more squarish, like this. Very soft nose, not this bony protrusion like we have, but softer, so that the only recognition then was the shadow as it fell upon the face, at the turn. Small lips, long nose, so long lips low down. Um, so what would be in the light was kind of a more coolish blue, a little bit of green to it. In the shadows, a little bit more of a cobalt or purple color. The beautiful part of it to me is that it was not so much shadow, but almost just a coloring of the skin, or perhaps the shadow works differently there, the light works differently. I'm not sure, but beautiful, very beautiful. Um, no signs of clothing, a smaller body, I saw shoulder, very small, thin shoulder. And again, just coming in over the shoulder, she turned and looked at me. We had that beautiful connection of, hey, and then I was gone again, back to that space where I started with my family. And then I would think of something else and away I would go. Another thing that I wanted to share with you that I encountered there is that I saw a future version of Earth. I don't exactly remember what took me to that. I was thinking about time and remembering, oh, Earth has time and how time was working. And that's how I got there. But it has to do with migration. So as I saw this future Earth, I saw a war. Earth looked very much like it does now. But it was like a third world war. So lots of countries fighting, a lot more fighting on American soil, um, infighting on American soil, almost a little bit, like a civil war in a way, pardon me, and also just across the globe. So, when I say migration, that's not the only reason there was a war that I recognized through intuition for this particular war, but that migration was really at the core and center of all of the issues for this war. Fear and frustration being, the driving point behind that. So the fear and frustration of being a migrant and having to leave your home, change your lifestyle, the fear and frustration of the people living in the space where the migrants are coming into and, taking housing and food and all of that. And then the just general fear and frustration of not really having anything to do about it. So a lot of fear and frustration there on all sides. And not what I was seeing from the other side then is not taking that experience and creating love out of it. So what I saw from the other side of that was this opportunity to take migration, take these new people coming into your culture and to love them and merge them and become this one new culture, to make it a beautiful moment of oneness and growing into a new humanity, a new earth. And that's not what was occurring. And also seeing that that's the other choice, the free will choice is to go towards love and making humanity this new, it's not us and them. It's not Europeans and Asians and Americans. It's not races. It's not males and females. It's people all living together as one or continuing down this path of fear and frustration. So I was able to see that, but I was also just able to see the other side of that, which seemed much farther in the future. And that was having this future of complete oneness where business kind of disappeared and we all just supported each other and lived a life where everyone had what they needed by doing what needed to be done because it was the right thing to do, not because it gave you pride, not because it gave you a bigger house or a fancier car, but because it serves humanity. it serves the ultimate goal of that awakening, that enlightenment that spirituality promises us, the golden life here on earth where we're all truly and completely equal and living as one. So I was able to see kind of both sides of that. And then I, would go back to being in that central space with my family, and I'd think of something else, and away I would go. Or I would remember something else, and away I would go. And part of that was spurred on by a life review that was going on kind of kind of started after I saw and was remembering myself. So going off and seeing my other selves, remembering myself, my life review started. And I would see things in my life review and I would think, oh, wait, but what about this? What about that? So my life review, compared to other life reviews you've heard, was pretty standard. I was kind of locked in the space that I was in with my family in front of me. I hadn't moved in that space at all. Melanie was still beside me. But my life review was kind of back here, and I would turn and watch it. And it's like it was on a movie screen, but there was no physical movie screen there. It was just showing in this space. And I experienced probably most of my life, but, more important moments, things that formed who I was, who I am today, things that, were good and things that were bad. So little things, because you're viewing it from the other side. I wasn't viewing it as Angela human. I was viewing it as my soul self. And so watching it is entirely different. You're not viewing it and quote unquote judging yourself the same way as you think that you would from here on earth. It's completely different. It's a completely different space, a completely different way of thinking. You're not clinging to time. You're not clinging to ego. You're not clinging to pride anymore. Those have all been let go. And no one was judging me at that point, except for the bit of humanity that still remained in me. For instance, I saw this moment where I was sitting in an intersection and I needed to pull out, and there was a lot of traffic. So it was a left turn, waiting for a hole, it's rush hour, cars, no break. And then I see this small spot. I'm thinking, and squeeze myself in there. I think I'm going to have to squeeze myself in there, but it's probably going to make the person, behind me mad. And I did it. I pulled into traffic. And, I remember doing it as a human. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. Now I can get home, right? Totally forgot about the person behind me. But from the other side, it was all about the other person. They were angry. They were not happy. I felt all that. I was them behind the wheel in their car driving. How's that even possible? Except that it is when you're on the other side, because it's a totally different set of physics, if you will, a totally different space, a way of interacting. And I felt terrible about it. Like, how could I do that? That was awful. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just waited my turn. So I was beating myself up, so to speak, about what seems like kind of trivial things here on earth for most of us. And then there were a lot of bigger things, like, for instance, remembering some pre-birth planning. So my father was not a nice man to me. He was abusive. And I was able to see an answer to a lot of people who ask the question, why is there suffering here on earth? How can you have so much love and joy and peace on the other side and then have suffering here. It's not logical. So this is what I experienced in my near-death experience. I saw that I planned to come here with my soul family. My father is a part of my soul family, just one member in my soul family. And we all were playing parts in this play, if you will. And I'm only using those terms because it's the best term to describe how it works from this side of the veil. So let me pause for just a second with this. My understanding from all that and from my studies afterwards is that, we live these multiple lives. We do it not always as the same person. So sometimes I could be me, and sometimes I could be my father, and sometimes I could play, if you will, the person who is my mother. And the reason for that is to learn and grow and become my soul, my individual soul, but to learn and grow and become all of us, to learn and grow and become the one, the cosmic source, the cosmic consciousness that is where we all originally extend from. So as we were planning this life together, I chose to play me, Angela, and come here. And here's the part about the suffering: to lovingly and graciously help the soul that is within my father grow and learn and become. So I chose to suffer. But again, stepping back out of my human body, I made that choice from the other side, where it's completely different than it is here. There is no time. This lifetime, instantaneous from the other side, very quick. The pain is a part of the growth. There is no pain on the other side. Like thinking back to my children, I saw my children's death. When I thought about leaving them behind, I was able to see what would happen to them if I stayed and didn't come back. And the pain, and I knew they would be there instantaneously. I knew that they were coming back to this space of love and light and peace, and everything would be okay then. So, when making these pre-birth plans, that's part of what went into it, is just this completely different perspective that is so hard to get to from your human self, from your human body. Yeah. So, yes, I saw that, I made this decision to come here and live out this life with this part of my family, to help my father to learn what it would be like to have these addictions, to help him learn to overcome those addictions. And my goal in that was to learn to use my voice and to speak out for what was right and just and true. And, have my learning and growth occur through that. And eventually I did. Eventually that's what happened. So it's just, that whole part of that experience was so enlightening and helped me understand suffering from a whole different perspective, from the perspective of myself on the other side. And this interplay that we create with each other, which leads to that, and also the free will portion of that. That's sometimes why we have to keep coming back, is because we're using our free will in the moment. We're protected from our soul self living this human life, forgetting our true selves, and then free will becomes what can allow us to make these different choices. So our agreement to feel and learn and be challenged really comes through a lot of that free will. So it was great to be able to see both points of view and to engage and deeply, learn from that experience. So really, the part of the suffering there is learning to reconcile suffering with this other place that is all love and peace and happiness, and to let go of our human ego, to think of it as, to think of it from the other viewpoint, not from our ego-based viewpoint, and to reconnect with that loving space. And then, my life review continued, and it was similar in some spaces where I would have this, just kind of momentary pause in the movie, if you will, and I would become this other person. I would understand what was occurring so much more deeply, be able to see it from my soul self side of things rather than my Angela self side of things. Pardon me. And that, pain is a part of the process. In my life review, as I got to the end of it, I definitely had a moment of reconnecting with my Angela self and thinking, I did not do as good of a job as I wanted to. And I think I kind of delved down into my human self a little bit more. And I thought, well, maybe I should create a punishment for myself, because that's what humans are supposed to do, right? You did something wrong, you should suffer. But right in the, again, instantaneously, right? Like I'm thinking it, the thought is coming, but at the same time, here comes the answer. And I felt this enormous love from everyone around me, that we're not judging you. You did a wonderful job. You helped us learn. You helped us grow. And this is a beautiful moment for everyone, this deep connection with each other. And I knew in that moment, no one around me, none of the souls that were there with me was judging me, that the only person judging me was Angela, like I mentioned before, that it was all me, as in the human side of me. And all the embarrassment and disappointment that I felt, and I did feel it in that moment. I had the exact same feelings that I have in my human body on the other side, even though I had left my body on Earth. I'm not sure how that works. And you can connect with me. Let's talk. But I definitely had those physical feelings of disappointment in myself, of embarrassment of behaving that way when I had such beautiful, lofty goals when I was, pre-birth planning and launching into my body. But I felt all these loving souls around me unconditionally loving me and saying it's okay. So I then was having, like seeing my family, thinking of them and how I was going to be leaving them behind. The portals opened. I saw my children again. It was the same way, this kind of flickering back and forth, seeing my husband in the hospital room, and being able to see what was happening in the hospital room at the same time. And then at the same time, feeling the person who was there, who is the soul of who served as my mother-in-law here. She passed from lung cancer a few years before. And I'm thinking, as I'm seeing my family, thinking about my life review, I'm looking at Melanie, my life guide, and I'm thinking, I really want to stay here. This is so beautiful and so comfortable. I'm free from the pain, and my family is going to be here instantaneously because there's no time. And I feel my mother-in-law's doing that. And Melanie is saying, you get to make the choice. My mother-in-law says she has to go take care of the children. And I wake up on the tilt table in the hospital room. And it feels terrible. All I want to do is go back. I want to go back, go back, go back, go back. That's what my brain is doing. I want to go back. So I close my eyes really tight and I just hope, maybe I can go back. Maybe I can go back. And I feel my body and it's heavy and hot and tight and wet. It's so gross. And when I feel out into my body, it's just black. It's like my soul is trying to reconnect and it can see into my body, but it hasn't quite gone all the way out there to my arms and my feet yet. And so I just sit there with my eyes tightly closed and I hear the doctor say, she's back. And my eyes pop open for just a second. I see the nurse. She's got the paddles, right? Literally, like the paddles are right over my face. I closed my eyes again and I just laid there until I had this moment of, okay, I have to come back to this life. And I opened my eyes. I could see my husband kind of peeking around the doctor and sat up and yeah, I was back here. So I'm glad that I'm back. I am. I mean, in that moment, I really wanted to stay, but I can see why I need to be back here. I can see the path before me and how I'm, there's importance to us all being here. Every one of us needs to be here. Every one of us needs to be doing what we're doing because you're here for a reason. It doesn't always feel that way, believe me. I'm there with you, but we are all here for a reason. And part of it is for me to share this information with you, to share that I had what can be described as an alien encounter during my NDE, and there was a deep spiritual component to it. That's a wonderful connection, and I hope that someone else out there finds hope and validation in that. That, I had, this past life review, I had pre-birth planning in my experience that I connected with, and I am just really wanting to add that to the collective foundation of knowledge so that we can all share our experiences and each person's experience can be like a puzzle piece. And we put our puzzle pieces together and it helps us understand this other dimension.